Hey, good morning, everyone. How's everybody doing this morning on this Sunday for me? And welcome. Uh, this is my live stream where we talk about photography, and I try to answer any questions on Olympus cameras, on systems, or any kind of general photography question. I can usually handle at this point, hopefully. And if I'm stumped, I'll try and get back to you. But uh, I haven't done a Sunday live stream in a while, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's not many people here today because the thing about having a show, you have to come on at the same time every week or whatever your schedule is so people know to come back, right? But those of you that are here, I appreciate it. And, I've been cranking out a lot of videos this week. I did 4 videos this week on, let's see, well, maybe 5, right? Well, at least 4, maybe 5, plus another live stream I did on Thursday. And, they were all kind of going back to my roots in some ways, where I do these very tutorials for beginners, people just getting started into photography that want to, um, really learn how to learn the craft, in other words. And I feel like there's a lot of good content out there already for beginners, but as I've always said, we all have our own voice, and it's finding the right instructor, teacher, mentor, whatever that you can connect with is very important. So if you're new to my channel and you connect with the material I've been putting out, I'm very happy to hear that, because I did get a lot of great comments on the tutorial series. And the reason I was able to crank out so many, because you guys know I haven't been really producing normal, regular content. I just been kind of live streaming a lot lately. But that material was actually from last year when I used to do the in-person classes. Might be 2 years now. Anyway, when I used to do some in-person classes, and because of the COVID lockdowns and everything and stuff, I had to stop. And really, all I had to do was convert the material from an in-person type scenario to something I could produce, make a video production of, so to speak, right? And it wasn't a big transition, and I probably could have done a better job, honestly, with all of that material had I taken more time. But that would only change the production quality, not so much the content. The content, I think, is pretty solid. So if you like those kind of videos, make sure you guys hit the like button on those videos, or especially if you can leave a comment on the videos if you like them, or if you have any questions from it, or if you think there's other videos I can make that would add to that particular video. Like, I got a question about when I forget which video it was, but they were looking at the images and they couldn't really see the difference in noise between a couple of images, and that's what I was trying to demonstrate, was the noise. So that's one area that didn't translate too well from my classroom setting to the online setting, because in the class it's very clear, you could see it, because I was doing it on my computer with a projector screen, and you could see the noise, but online I guess it didn't come out quite as well. Excuse me. But anyhow, if there's anybody new here, say hello. I'd love to get to know you a little better, because these chats that I do, typically on Thursdays now, but occasionally Sunday. I do more Sundays when it's cold out, like in the wintertime. Sundays in the summer, I'm usually doing other activities. Like, I should be out at the boat today, but I just couldn't get the I just couldn't get the energy to go, so to speak, because when you go there, you have to be kind of on, and I wanted to do photography today. I didn't feel like going out to the marina, and also I did want to catch up with some interesting things. Gosh, excuse me. I ate some pizza yesterday, so I've been kind of congested. I don't know why dairy or cheese does that to me. It wasn't just pizza. I had a block of cheddar cheese. Not the whole block, but like half a block of cheddar yesterday. Oh my God. It's just clogging my arteries. I know it. And I'm at an age now that I can't be eating like that, because it compounds quite a bit, or it just feels bad. It feels really bad at this time. Not like not like you can reverse any problems you really have already up to this point. So if you're young, eat well, diet, exercise, take care of yourself, because it compounds quite a bit as you get older. And I'm not that old, I'm in my 50s, but I can definitely feel the error of my ways when I was younger at this point. Oh, hey, Wally. Thank you, Wally. Thank you, Daniel. Good to see you. Hey, Randy, how are you? And Thomas, good to see you. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And David Black, good to see you. See what? Oh, Jeff Painter's here. John Allen, Tony, hi. Scott. Oh, Scott had to leave. It's going to the coast. Nice. So have a good time there. If you're watching this later, I hope you had a good time. That's what I need to do, is go to the coast, right? It's only about 3 or 4 hours from here. Of course, that's a couple $100 trip now with the way gas prices are. I don't know if I could do it anymore. Wow, I was always very conservative, or not conservative, but very budget conscious, right? Very conscious of my, using gas and utilities and everything like that. So whenever I go out, I try to think of ways I can combine trips so that I can get everything done and then come home and then we're done, right? And it's been very effective, because you guys would be shocked at how small my utilities and gas is. I fill up my tank like once a month, usually twice a month, but this year I think we're 6 months in. I've filled up maybe 8 times my car. Kind of speaks to, I haven't had a whole lot of photo jobs. I mean, I've had a little less than the usual amount. I got one coming up this week, so if you're in my last stream, you know that the battery for my OM1 came in. They called me on Thursday, but I'm not going to be able to go out till Wednesday, because they're, for the price it cost me to go pick it up, I could have just bought another battery myself. Where it feels like it, right? So I'm just combining trips. I have a photo job not too far from the camera store, so I'm going to go out on Wednesday. Oh. Yeah, Randy, your road trips have been cut in half too, right? I know. And just, fuel oil. Oh my God. In January of 2020, I put like 150 gallons in, and it was only $300 to put fuel oil, for winter. And when I put it in January of this year, I put 100 gallons in. It cost me $350 for less fuel and cost more. And I looked, and if I had to fill it up right now, my God, 100 gallons would be $650 for 100 gallons. And 100 gallons will not last me more than a week or two. If I wanted to keep my house at like 55 degrees, if I wanted to keep it 65 degrees, yeah, a week, that would be it for $600. So that's definitely going to be a problem this winter. I'm going to have to think of some options for heating my house, because I can't afford $600-700 a month in fuel oil. Well, anyhow, that's neither here nor that's not even photography related at all. But it is, I know a lot of us are feeling that pain of the inflation and energy prices, but it's just shocking how quickly it changed, right? Usually, over time, I expect things to get a little. Camera gear is more expensive now. I mean, everything is up by at least $50 on every lens in the Olympus lineup, it seems, and the discounts are slimmer or thinner, right? And even in the used market, I'm seeing a little bit of creep on some items that used to never go up in price. But there seems to be a little bit of creep in pricing too on the items that I look at. I know some things are much more expensive, film cameras and certain lenses, they're definitely up there and never depreciate. But wow. So I was looking at some lenses. I'd like to get a macro lens, and the 60 macro is obviously the clear choice, right, to get. But I was looking at some other options. There's a Laowa 50 millimeter. It's a manual focus, but it'll do 2x magnification, and the reviews are really good on it. I need to turn this computer fan down. I can't hear myself think. The laptop life, right? There we go. I don't really need 16 cores running at once, right? Just to do a live stream. So I don't know if anybody's has used the Laowa 50 millimeter. Let me know in the comments below, or in the chat section, if you like it and if it's worth it, because it's about the same price, I think, as the 60 macro from Olympus. So given the choice, I would get the 60 macro, because I think it's on sale for $450. It used to go on sale for $400, right? But now it's on sale for $450 because they bumped the price on that, it looks like, by $50. And I can still find it used in under $400, like $350 or $300, depending on condition. But at $400 or $450, I'd rather just buy brand new and get the warranty and peace of mind that it hasn't been dropped 100 times and the lenses are out of alignment, etc. So I might get that this week, a 60 macro, because I know a lot of people that have it and they really like the lens, and I've only heard good things about it, and the images I've seen from it are stellar, because you can do focus stacking, focus bracketing, and all that if your camera has that built in, which can make a difference, right, in the image if you have the focus bracketing doing it automatically anyway. Oh, all right. Let me get a little sip of water. So Randy says the 50 millimeter threshold macro lens is amazingly sharp. Okay. Yeah, because I'm wondering, if I can get a 2x macro for about the same price, I just have to manually focus. That's one thing, right? Or I can get a 1x magnification with a native mount, Olympus lens with autofocus and focus stacking, and it's a tough call. And I was watching this guy on the live stream this week on Thursday. After my live stream, I went to go watch the OM System live stream. The guy does macro photography, and he uses the 60 macro. Well, it's interesting though. I have to look into this a little bit, but he used a bellows, right? And he said that a bellows is different than extension tubes, because extension tubes, you're changing the optics of the lens in a way that it's not designed to do, right? It's not designed to hit the focus plane, 26 millimeters away from the sensor, right? So you're pushing the focus plane 26 millimeters away, and the lens wasn't designed to do that. And it's true, the image is a little bit softer. You lose a little bit of light when you use extension tubes. But if you're just kind of casual about macro or close-up photography, it's an easy way to get into it, because you can buy a set of extension tubes for like $20-$25, right? Maybe 30 now, but it's a very, very affordable way to get into close-up photography. It's not true macro, but it's very close, right? You can get at least a half x magnification, which is much more than, that's double or triple what a lot of lenses do natively without extension tubes. But a macro lens, giving you a full 1-to-1 ratio with no distortion, because macro lenses, I think I would hope that if a manufacturer calls something a macro lens, that it is optically perfect with no distortion, so that when you measure something with a macro lens 1-to-1, it matches exactly what your sensor is, right? So if I take a picture of 17 millimeters or 10 millimeters, it's exactly 10 millimeters on my sensor with no distortion, and it has to be, and it's also optically tuned for close-up focusing. So that would be my expectation when a company says this is a macro lens, right? And I would have a very high level of confidence if I was buying an true Olympus macro lens, that would be the case. But these third-party lenses, how are they, at half or a third or a quarter of the cost, some of them? Is it possible that they're not applying the same rigid specifications to their macro? All they're doing is magnifying the image through the optics, versus magnifying but also making sure that it is optically correct in terms of the distortion and reproduction of the image. And not that it really matters for the kind of things I do, right? But if you're very scientific and very serious about your macro work, and you do something, you need the subject to be perfect, a perfect representation in terms of size and dimensions. I'd probably avoid a third-party lens and just go with the brand name, with the assumption that it is optically correct in terms of reproducing 1-to-1. But that said, what was interesting is, and I'll have to test this for myself, but people say that the focus breathing on the 60 is really, it's present. I don't know how bad it is, but if you're focusing from the minimum focus point to infinity and there's focus breathing, no big deal really for a lens like that. But if you're getting a lot of focus breathing when you're trying to stack something at a 1-to-1 reproduction rate, that could be a problem, because then that tells me it's not optically perfect for doing macro work, if there's really any kind of focus breathing in a short distance for what it's designed to do. And again, for me personally, it's not a big deal, right? Software kind of corrects for that in some ways, but you'll have an imperfect image. It won't be a true macro. Not a mathematically perfect macro, in other words. Rod Meta. Oh my goodness, Rod, it feels like years since I've seen you. Hold on. I'm gonna put your name up here. Hey Lasse, how you doing? Annette, good to see you. Oh yeah, Novaflex also, right? Wait, what were you saying about the focus breathing? I see. You're talking about the bellows. I assume the Novaflex bellows that you would stack 40 shots, but it gets old after a while. Plus, there's focus breathing with the bellows. See, that's why I'm a little bit confused. Randy has some experience with it, right? Because I think I saw a comment here. Um, I have a very old Olympus film bellows that I adapted to my new Ollie cameras. You can also reverse the lenses for Mac. Yeah, I've seen the old Olympus bellows on eBay, I think, for pretty inexpensive, but I'm going to have to look into that. Because to me, a bellows is just a really long extension tube. So why is that not changing the focus plane that the lens was designed to hit? See, it's an area of photography I haven't really looked into because I'm not into macro, but I got a little bit inspired by watching that live stream. So I'm gonna have to look into it. Why are the Novaflex is so expensive? Is it worth it, or can I just get a cheap bellows and see what happens? I don't know. I have to look into it, but that's cool. Um, and yeah, I noticed this too. There's not a lot of if they exist, they're not really promoted or doing anything on YouTube, I should say. Uh, but yeah, there's a lot in UK, and they seem very, they're very active, right? And yeah, in the US, there is a guy, Mike Amico, I think Bomberger, I think is his name, is also here in the US. And then Joe Edelman used to be one, but he declined this year. And so there's not, yeah, there isn't really. If there's an ambassador in the USA that has a YouTube channel, I don't know about it, right? Uh, well, duh, I'm an idiot. You know who's the U.S. ambassador, an Olympus ambassador here in the U.S.? I just had an interview with her, Emily Talpin. Oh my God, and she's a macro person, right? She loves macro photography, so I don't know. So she has her own YouTube channel, and she's an Olympus ambassador. So that's one here in the U.S. But she speaks with a French accent, so I think that's why it seems, I that's why I didn't remember that she actually lives here in the U.S. Uh, so I've had her on as a guest. I'm gonna have her on again. I hope, after the summer. And if I buckle down and do a little due diligence, I can probably find a few more. Like I said, I think Mike Amico, and then this other guy Bomberger, I think is his name. Yeah, that makes sense to some extent. I have to look into it. Yeah, thank you, Annette. You just said the two names that I I just remembered. So I'm gonna reach out to Mike Amico and try and have him on as well. And the macro guy Andy was also using microscope objectives. Yes, that was pretty cool, right? Uh, I've seen some DIY type, microscope lens macro stuff, which was interesting. But I need to practice. I practiced a little bit with my extension tubes the other day. Well, on Thursday after the live stream, I went out to my backyard and took pictures of my flowers. And amazingly, uh, there's a free software called Picolay, and I've done a video on it before. But it does photo stacking or focus stack. It stacks your focus bracketed images, and it actually did a better job than Photoshop did. Excuse me, in stacking the images. There was less holes and aberrations and things out of focus. It was much sharper with the Picolay, and I was just using the default settings. I didn't go in there and tweak it at all. So that surprised me a little. Because Photoshop, Adobe, they are pretty solid. I've used them for a long time, and not for focus stacking so much, but for a lot of other stuff, and the results have been excellent. So I was a little surprised to see that the focus stacking in Adobe was not excellent or not perfect. And that guy Andy was talking about some third-party software that he uses, which I'm sure is paid software. I'll have to look into that. But for now, like I said, until I really get into it and start doing things, I'll just go with the Picolay, which is free, and it seems to do a good job. Hey, Peter, how are you? Brooke Bartleson, thank you, Annette. Yeah, there's a lot. Like I said, if you start digging, you'll find them. They just don't have a big presence on YouTube. I think is why they seem to be kind of out of the light, so to speak, or not. What's the word? My brain. Seriously, I need to stop trying so hard. To be so articulate every time. I need to be able to just talk. I don't get it. Um, another thing, I've been doing this week, and I talked about this briefly. Okay, Rod, we'll see you later. Thanks for dropping in. Tom, good to see you. Another thing I wanted to address or follow up on that I talked about on Thursday was because Casey over at Camera Conspiracies did a video about the OM1 video, and he had kind of mixed feelings about it. And he's not the only one. I've heard, and we're talking about video autofocus. And I don't do enough of it to kind of have to be able to pass judgment on it, even though I do have that one video, like I said, I feel a little guilty about. But specifically, I wanted to talk about saving your video settings in the custom modes, because I watched the video. It's called 5 Tips for the OM1 by Peter Forsgaard. And then I watched Casey's Camera Conspiracy video. So in Peter's video, he said you can save video settings in a custom setting. And in Casey, he showed that you cannot. And the answer is they're both right. There's kind of a hybrid in between these two. And I was going to make a video on it yesterday because I've been trying to crank out something every single day this week, right? But I failed yesterday. I just burned out. So maybe today or tomorrow I'll have a video on this. But yeah, it's really a combination, or not a combination, but it's kind of half what Casey said and half what Peter said. Now Peter, he didn't go into detail or show you how to do it, right? He just said you can, and you can a little bit. And then Casey was like, you can't, right? And that's flat out. That's like a partial truth, just like Peter's was kind of a partial information. I shouldn't say truth. Partial information there from Peter, and partial information there from Casey at Camera Conspiracies. And hey, Marco, yeah, it's kind of a surprise. I just, when I got up this morning, I decided not to go out to the marina, so I just turned the camera on and sat down and said, let's talk to the community, talk to my friends here. So here's the deal with saving video modes to your custom settings. The custom settings are designed for photo mode, right? And I'll do a detailed video on this once I've been going through the user manual and double checking everything that they said. But here's how it works, right? Custom modes C1, 2, 3, and 4 on the mode dial are basically for saving your photo settings, right? And if you go into the OM1 menu, they compartmentalize. They separated photo settings like AF and computational and stuff from video. So video has its own little menu or tab. I would say most of the things in the video menu cannot be saved to the custom settings. So if you make any changes in the video menu, 90% of the things in the video menu cannot be saved to C1234. However, the key things that can be saved to the C1234 can be saved to C1234. So this is what I've confirmed so far, right? The video codec you can save, the resolution you can save. So what does that mean? I want to shoot in H.264 Cinema 4K, and you can also save the bit, not the bit rate and the what's the other thing? The frame rate, right? So I can save to C1 Cinema 4K 10-bit, 60p. Is that it, right? Cinema 4K 10-bit 60p and the codec, whether it's H.264 or H.265. So really those four things I can save. I can also save the picture mode to some extent. What does that mean? Well, if in the video menu I select match the photo mode, then it'll record with the 4 specs I talked about, but also the picture mode that the photo mode is in. So if I'm in monochrome on my photo mode, when I go to record, it'll record in monochrome in video. And if I select a flat profile or a log profile, whatever those are, it'll do that. So it'll save, so you can match the photo mode, or you can save like a flat profile or a log profile, whatever is available for that codec. So those are basically the 4 or 5 things I know that can be done from the video menu. Now, when you go to the other menus in the camera, like the autofocus menu, for example, there are settings in that menu, even though it's a photo mode type menu, there are settings in that menu for video autofocus. Those can be saved to the custom settings, right? So there's 5 or 6 things that I think are critical to saving different video modes, different video settings to the C1234. So Peter was absolutely correct. You can save video settings in the C1234, but you have to know what settings are saved, because most of them are not. The most important ones are. Now, these are the things that cannot be saved that are also very important. And that is, frame rate, aperture, video mode. Like if I want to record in full manual mode video with those other 4 things, I want to control the shutter angle, for example, or I want to control the aperture, for example. Cannot be done. You cannot save, because anytime you push record mode when you're in a photo mode, the video mode goes into program mode, meaning it's going to be auto ISO, auto aperture, auto shutter speed. So it's controlling the exposure 100% when you hit the record button when you're in a photo mode. That's what I've discovered so far. Now, I will be in Cinema 4K 10-bit log H.265 and recording in OM log 400, but I will have no control over the exposure. So shutter angle, aperture, ISO are going to be what they're going to be, what the camera thinks is the correct exposure. Now, there is, what was I talking about? I should finish my sentence before I look at the chat section. I was talking about something with video. So I got Cinema 4K, I got 10-bit H.265 at 60 frames per second, OM log 400, but exposure out the window. It's controlled by the camera in program mode. And then I can go to, so if I can save that to C1, Then in C2, I can save full HD, 240 frame per second, 8-bit, natural color profile. I can save that in C2. But again, that's it. The exposure, shutter speed, aperture, and ISO is going to be controlled by the camera because it's recording in program mode. Now, that to me is not a big deal because I'm not a hardcore videographer. I'd say 99.9% of the time I record in program mode anyway when I'm recording video, right? For my personal stuff. For my professional work, I record in full manual, because I have to set the hyperfocal distance, and I have to set the well, actually, I just shoot an aperture priority on my pro jobs. I let the camera deal with the shutter speed and aperture, or shutter speed and ISO, but I control the color profile, all that stuff, right? So it doesn't, in other words, it doesn't affect me in a way that matters, right? That I cannot save exposure settings from the video menu for video into a C1, 2, 3, 4. So that's what I'm going to make a video on this week. If you're watching this stream, and you're fairly competent with your camera already, like you're familiar with all the different settings, you probably won't need to watch the video because I just told you everything. Now the video, I'm going to be a lot more specific, right? I'm going to have a little spreadsheet, and I'm going to say this column, that column, video's got to be a little more detailed, right? But for the most part, that sums it up right there. Saving video modes on the Olympus OM1. That's how it is. Now, as I'm going through and creating my video for this, a billion ideas come up for how OM1 could have done this better. Designing the menu system. Because this, and I complained about this, when it first came out, because I noticed a couple of things right away. But there are definitely there's some continuity issues in the menu system where they put things in where it doesn't make sense to me. One of them I mentioned today, the autofocus for video is in the autofocus menu. On one hand, that seems intuitive, but if you want to be able to save video modes to a custom setting, you need to have all of the video features in a single category. All of the video modes, whether it's autofocus or you can change, save. Well, I did say that. You can save the autofocus settings for video into the C1 separately from the photo mode. But yeah, that needs to be just a little bit more continuity with the settings and the menu. And I get it. They planned out the menu. I'm sure they got flow charts, all over the place, trying to figure out how to arrange the menu in a way that is compatible with the electronics of the camera. Because a lot of functions, most of the functions between video and photo overlap, right? The functions are exactly the same, whether you're in video mode or in photo mode. But there are modes in video that are completely separate. So I think they did a very good job at separating all of the video functions into its own video menu. But there's a couple loose ends there that they need to tie in and make it just a little bit tighter. The problem is at this point, they've already published all the PDF, manuals, instruction manuals, and everything. And if they do a firmware update, rearranging the menu, that's going to introduce a lot of technical issues, right? So let's say they do a firmware update, making 5 or 6 changes to the menu, where things are in the menu. That almost automatically makes every manual PDF published up to that point obsolete. No big deal. they've published revisions to the manual based on firmware time to time, and it's not a big deal. But then any customized settings that you might have had and saved to your phone, because you can save your custom settings to your phone, are going to be obsolete. It's not going to be compatible. There's just no way it can work. You're going to have to resave everything, which if they tighten up the menu system a little bit, that'll be perfectly fine. I think with most people, they won't care. They're like, oh, the menu makes more sense now. It's okay. And then, the other technical issue is, I don't know how the teams are organized over at OM Systems in terms of development of cameras and menus and electronics, but you're going to have people that specialize in the hardware side, right? And then people that specialize on the software side. I've never seen where, at least in a large company, right, or larger company, where one team can do it all: software, hardware, design, physical design, ergonomics. You got to have separate teams, and then you have a couple of managers or project managers that kind of have a general knowledge of everything, but they've risen up through the company with a very specific skill set. But because they have a good broad knowledge of the other skill sets that you would need to make a camera, they can be project manager for that particular group. And then, of course, you have the overall guy, right? The top guy that manages the overall design of the camera. But anyhow, my point is, if you make changes in the software, they have to communicate with the hardware guys and say, okay, we're going to rearrange a couple of menu items, and then we want to be able to make the video settings. We want to be able to save the video settings to a custom mode. And when we're trying to code this, we're not seeing the code libraries for us to be able to move these things, right? So it might require a total redesign of the baseline operating system of the camera to be able to do these things. And so that's why, when camera companies come out with firmware updates, or let me rephrase that. When I hear YouTubers, other YouTubers come out and say, oh, this would be a simple firmware update. I have some experience in this area, right? Running a company sometime. It's been a long time, but I used to have a company that we wholesaled computer parts and things, and so I had to have a very good general knowledge of the manufacturing process, because I used to deal with manufacturers building specific parts for my company, right? And I had to go through all that, because I used to rebrand things. I used to make white label box or white box systems and things, and wholesale those out. It was a whole thing back in the day. But so I have some knowledge, right? I have some idea of how these things work. And when somebody online, another YouTuber or creator, I should just say creators. I hate that term YouTuber. These other creators come out and say, oh, this is just a simple firmware update, or this should be a simple firmware update, or they'll do this in a firmware. I'm like, I don't know if it's that simple. I get it. Our cameras are basically, computers, right? They have very sophisticated CPUs and other components in them to make them do what they do. But it's not a simple thing just to say, I'm going to do a firmware update to change or rearrange features or add features to the camera. It's a big deal and can take a lot of research between various teams that design the camera, because you have the hardware guys that work with the ergonomic guys, right? The hardware guys, they design the boards and decide on what CPUs and other parts to use on the processing board. the shutter mechanism, all of that. And even that is separate, right? Mechanical type engineering versus electrical engineering. But you have these guys, they have to work with the guys in ergonomics, and they have to work with the guys on the software side. And then all three of these guys have to make this work together. And doing a firmware update on any kind of changes, that's going to require coordination between all three groups. Because if we change being able to save video settings to custom one, right? I mean, all the video settings, like manual, particularly the exposure settings, into C1. I don't know if that's a simple thing. It's not a simple thing to do from how I'm putting it together in my head. So anyhow, watch for that video. Hopefully I can do it today or tomorrow, and it'll be online and you guys can watch it. So let me catch up on the chat, because I've been jibber jabbering for 45 minutes. Giga Colorscapes. Are you this? I'm just curious. Is this? I forget your real name, but there's another username called Gigafish. I don't know if you're one and the same. Gigafish and then Giga Colorscapes. Maybe you changed it. But yeah, the OM1 will do 422. It'll do 420 10-bit internal, and then 422 10 or 12-bit external. I don't know what the external specs are exactly, but the external spec is at least 422 10, but it might be 12. And then Marco said, and his body crashed 3 times. Okay, what's this? Says, oh my God. None of us are getting any younger. Watching Casey's video, he's also doing 2 things wrong. He hasn't figured out how to set PASM mode video, and 2, he's using CAF plus tracking. Okay, I didn't watch it that closely. I was more focused on the being able to save video mode to the custom settings, right? The actual performance of the camera, I didn't pay attention to his results at all, or what he was doing right or wrong, because I'm getting great results. I'm not having any issues with autofocus, really, especially in photo mode. And in video mode, I haven't done enough to compare what I do versus what he was doing. So I didn't really pay attention to the autofocus issues he was having. I just watched and said, okay, so he's having some problems with objects coming in front of the subject versus objects behind it. Like if the bird is sitting behind a branch or a few leaves, it's going to struggle a little bit. And that's true for any camera, you know? Nobody, I don't care what brand it is, it's going to have trouble with that. So doing tests like that on its own, it's kind of in a bubble. You have to put it side by side with another camera system and say, okay, this is the OM1, this is the Fuji X-T4. Let's try and record this same scene and see what happens. And then he needs to have a very high level of competency with the settings in each camera to make sure he's optimized it for what he's trying to do. And he doesn't do that. I know he tries, right? But he doesn't do that. He doesn't have the field experience with the OM1 in particular. I don't know how long he's had the camera, but there are, there's so many settings in the autofocus for you to tweak and manage, and whatever combination might be optimized for what he was trying to do. And then the same thing with the X-T4. Now, that said, I understand the problem. You should be able to turn on the camera, autofocus, animal detect, and it should just work. You shouldn't have to, you know, deep dive into the menu and tweak 10,000 different settings. For the average consumer, that's just not going to fly. But this is a professional camera, so you need to take the time to learn everything, right? Um, so that you get the best results. So I think he said he's doing a side by side with the XT4 in a later video. So that'll be more interesting to watch than what he was doing in that video. But I get your point that, yeah, he didn't have a lot of settings. Um, I'm sure he had a lot of the settings wrong. Not wrong, but at their default settings, or not. The best way to say it, he did not optimize the settings in a way that would be very flattering to the OM1 for autofocus for the kind of things he was doing. So I get it. You know, I could take any camera and make it look like it sucks, right? If I mess with the settings. You know what I mean? So that said, if you don't optimize the settings, the camera's not going to look like it's performing as well as the hype is. So I don't know. But I get your point. Um, oh, John Truman, how are you? Oh, I'm sorry you have COVID. I hope you get better soon, buddy. Yeah, I don't wish that on anybody. My sister and her family all got COVID. They're all fully vaccinated, boosted, all that stuff. But yeah, her and her two adult, well, they're not. Her and her two kids. You know, one's in college, one's going to college, so they're basically all adults, and they all got it, and they were all laid out in a big way. The kids, not so much. I don't think they even had a sniffle. They just had like a sore throat or something. But my sister and her husband, yeah, were pretty laid out. So it's definitely very, it's harder on people of age, right, that are older. And that's what I mean. Take care of yourself when you're young. You know, as you get older, man, these things compound, and then you get something, some kind of virus or some other thing that is attacking your already compromised system. Yeah, that's not fun. And Mark Sulaway is here. Hello. Oh, hey, Rick, how are you? I'm just catching up here. It says here, uh, totally agree on updates, and we mustn't forget that the various design teams were likely work for independent. Yeah, that's the other thing is a lot of times, you know, they can bring in independent contractors to help them with a specific project, and then they're gone, and with all their NDAs and all that, and chances are that none of them. That's a very good point. That it's very possible. And, you know, these consultants may have worked for Olympus in the past as employees, but now they're independent. I mean, I don't know how Japanese things are. Maybe Japanese culture is a little different. Uh, if that's even an issue, right? But as a business here in the US, I know it's very common for people to leave major companies, but then still work for them as independent contractors, right? So they're no longer an official employee. But they have the same office, same desk, you know, but they're now an independent contractor versus uh, an employee. But yeah, you're right. And Marco says the problem is he's got an XT4 optimized and he doesn't know what he's doing on the OM1. So MD is already set up and he'll never come back to. Yeah, you're right. And that's what I mean. His channel is just entertainment, and I get it. He tries, but it's not. You have to take everything, and not just Casey, but everybody, including myself. You have to take everything with a grain of salt and do your due diligence on your own. Because in the end, none of us are, aside from some of the ambassadors and Olympus, even then, sometimes I question uh, well, let me take that back. The OM ambassadors that I've seen to this point are extremely competent photographers and have lots of experience, but they're just like anybody else in the sense that, a brand new camera comes out, they're not going to know everything about how to optimize the camera. And over time, they will for their specific genre, right? So, like if I ask Emily Taupin, who's kind of a macro wildlife type photographer, to say, what are the best settings for astrophotography? She's not going to be able to help you as well as, say, somebody like Ben, who's not an ambassador, but has a very high competency level with Olympus cameras and astrophotography. So you have to, I don't even know why I'm talking about that, but yeah, Casey is, Casey tries, but it's not, he's definitely not at the level of, say, an ambassador who specializes in video, which I don't know if they have any at OM Systems. But I'm gonna make my video about saving custom settings, saving video modes to C1234, and what the limitations are. Because there is a workaround to the exposure, right? Because I told you that, gosh, I'm all over the place, but I told you that the camera in video mode, when you're in a custom mode, takes over the, yeah, I'm going to jumble this up, but video is recorded in program mode, so the camera takes control of the exposure, aperture, shutter speed, ISO. But if before you hit the record button, you lock the exposure to whatever you want, like if I point the camera at a very bright scene and I want to lock the exposure for just the bright scene, I can do AEL, lock the exposure while I'm in photo mode, hit the record button, and then the camera, it doesn't necessarily save the exact shutter speed, aperture, and ISO that it was using when it was in the photo mode, but it does maintain the exposure from photo to video mode, and it locks it so it stays. So that's going to be one of my tips when I make that video, how to do that and demonstrate it. So I'm going to really deep dive into what exactly is being saved in the custom modes for video, because it's true. It's true you can, but there are things that it cannot do. And I'll try to explain why I think that is and what they need to do to work around that. What they need to do is they need to make it so that you can save everything in the video menu to a C1. And right now, that's not the case. Okay. Holy crap. Your resting heart rate is 56. You're 67? I think you've told me that before, but that man, that's awesome. I think my resting is around 70, and I'm grossly, it's probably closer to 80 sometimes. It's ridiculously high. And my blood pressure is a little bit elevated too most of the time. So I know I need to nip this in the bud, right? As much as I can. And let's see. John Matthews says camera conspiracy often plays with the camera only for a few days and then judges it the same of helping future. Yeah. In reality, he causes OMDS to lose money. Yeah. Ultimately, all these drive-by reviewers, and Casey's not. Casey over there, Camera Conspiracies, I can't stress enough that he's mainly an entertainment channel, but it's unfortunate. I think people might take him too seriously. But yeah, there's a lot of channels out there, and like I said, including myself, I made one video, or I've probably made videos that weren't very flattering. But for the most part, I think people get that. Well, let me talk about overall. Overall, there's not a lot of people reviewing OM systems anymore anyway, Micro Four Thirds in general. But when they do, especially a few years ago, they're very critical Micro Four Thirds. And were it not for people like Peter and Robin and Jimmy and Maddie and Emily for the Panasonic side, plus all the efforts by Olympus and now OM Systems, I guarantee the release of the OM1 would have been a flat failure at this point. It would have been a failure because nobody in the social media, YouTube, whatever, if there was nobody there to support the systems in the way that we do, they would have had a hard time, because just having your ambassadors and doing the small videos that they do now ain't going to cut it. You need a community of support and a user base, and you need new customers as well. So if we're not for channels like what I do, what Peter, everyone I mentioned, I think the OM1 would have been a tough sell. But as users of the system, and of course we're all biased, we're fans of Micro Four Thirds. That in and of itself, being a fan, kind of makes you a little biased. But all of us use the cameras professionally, right? We get paid to use these cameras. And we have the option to choose any system that we want, all of us, right? We can choose anything we want, but we chose Micro Four Thirds. For the most part, the OM1 and EM1 Mark III, these are cameras of choice for our professional work. So it adds some credibility to what we say, right? Even if we're just fans or ambassadors or whatever, it gives us a little bit more credibility because we do have the option to choose any system we want. If Peter or Jimmy wanted to shoot Canon, right, they could drop Olympus and go be a Canon ambassador or Canon shooter, if not ambassador. They could do it tomorrow if they wanted to, right? Assuming there's no penalty for getting out of a contract with OM Systems, right? Or no severe penalty anyway. It's kind of like breaking your contract on your cell phone, right? You get this cancellation fee or termination fee. But they could if they wanted to and if they needed to, right? But clearly we don't need to switch systems. We're getting more than enough, way more than enough out of the systems now as professional photographers, whatever our genre. And there's a wide variety there, right? Emily does weddings, and Maddie, what does he do? I think he's a portrait guy. Peter's more of a corporate guy. And then Robin is also an events and wedding type guy. Not wedding so much. None of these guys talk about their professional work much, and you guys know I do real estate, architectural type stuff, right? They probably have, but I just can't remember. But in any case, that's my point, is we can add a certain amount of credibility to the system as professional users, meaning we get paid for our work. Being a professional photographer can have a lot of different meanings, right? But a legal definition, at least here in the United States, the legal definition for professional is you get paid to do what you do with a certain level of competency, right? Being paid for work you know, as a professional, there's a certain level of competency that the client expects when they're paying for something. And if you don't meet that level of competency, you get sued or whatever. So that's what it means here in the US anyway. In other countries, they might use the term differently, and saying you're professional photography adds another level of core competencies and business practices, maybe associations and certifications, things like that. There may be other countries, those quality, to be called a professional photographer might require additional things, right? But here in the US, it's a little bit simpler. If you get paid, you are expected to have a certain amount of competency, and that word expectation is kind of loose too, right? And that's it from a legal perspective. Now, I am a member of the Professional Photographers Association, which in of itself doesn't mean anything, because anybody with $300 a year can join, whatever the cost is. It's something like that. Anybody with a heartbeat and $300 can join. But they have a lot of training materials, and they have a lot of tools and stuff for you as a photographer. If you want to run a business, it'll help you a lot as a business. And they also have certifications, so I can become a certified professional photographer. And I took sort of the mock exam. They have like multiple mock exams that you can take for practice before you take the real exam. And other than something about color, so I have to brush up, because I don't pay attention to color in the way they were asking. It was something like, if you have something that's tinted this way and you want to offset it, what color would you use on your flash? And I'm like, what would happen if I shine a yellow light on a blue surface? It just doesn't, my brain just doesn't click and tell me, it's not intuitively, right? So that's something I'd have to learn academically and not in practice. Because in practice, I white balance everything. I use a white flash, bare flash of pure white, so that I can white balance everything. And I try to, well, anyway. So I took the exams, and I'm like, no problem, right? I can be a certified professional photography under the Professional Photographers Association, which has, a lot of credibility here in the US among photographers. I don't know about credibility among our clients. I doubt any of my clients have ever heard of the PPA. But I can put that on my business card. I'm PPA member, certified professional photographer, and they have some other certifications. But for the CPP, certified, other than that question on color, I was about 100%. I could answer just about every question on there. So I could take the exam, pass it, get my CPP, and add that to my. But here in the US, titles and certifications and things like that, unless it's required by law, it's not a big deal. Nobody cares that I'm not a certified professional photographer. None of my clients, they never ask me, what are my credentials, right? And same thing with some other photographers I know that work professionally. None of them have these kind of certifications, and yet they have their business and they're going with it, right? There are certain professions you're required to be licensed in the state, and you have to have that to do any business at all in that field. Certainly, like a doctor, right? On one end, a lot of my clients are agents and brokers. They all have to be licensed because they have a certain accountability to their client, fiduciary responsibility. So they have to be licensed. My only responsibility is to deliver a good product, and do a good service. So getting a certification or license, or not license, I don't need to be licensed to do what I'm doing. But getting certified and all of that stuff just doesn't add any credibility to my work, right? For my work, I just show I go by word of mouth. This broker, this broker's my client, uh, or the broker will say, this is who I use. If you're looking for somebody good, you can use my guy, right? Because my broker says, I know a guy. Yeah, call Rob. Yeah, I know a guy who can do that. And he has good prices and he does great work, That's how it works here for what I do in photography. And I don't want to take away from any photographers that are in the PPA and have these certifications, because CPP is only one, they have several others. If that helps them in their business and their market, having these kind of credentials, power to you, right? But for me, it doesn't really make much difference. And that's why I haven't pursued it, because it's like $250 to take the test. And there's another part of it, I forget. You have to submit some images and stuff, which is not a big deal. What they were asking for in terms of, let's see some of your work, what they were asking for, I know would be just fine with any judge, because it was very rudimentary type skill sets they were looking for in your photography, and I could demonstrate that easily with some images. But yeah, I don't want to pay $250 just to have this certification next to my name yet. Maybe in the future I will. And that's what I mean. It's kind of like, it's not too different than saying, if I put down that I have, a master's degree in photography, right, on my business card. I don't, but just say if I put that on my business card, nobody's going to care as a client. They're not going to care. They want to see your work, right, and what you can do for them. How much do you cost? That's number one. What's your price? And then, when can you do it? Everything here is like this, schedule and fast. It's like, how much do you cost and how soon can you do it? And how soon will I get my pictures back? That's all the client cares about, really. Yes, they did purchase the entire R&D department for the imaging division. My question is, did they keep everybody, or did they let some people go and bring them back in as independent contractors for certain, anyway, it doesn't matter. The cameras are great. It doesn't matter how they got there, in my opinion. I always felt that online reviewers have to take responsibility for what they say. Yeah. I mean, the only accountability is in the comments and subscribers, right? So if they're consistently putting out misinformation, or misinformation is the wrong word. If they're constantly putting out I would say sloppy work, right? Then nobody's going to watch them. And that's the only accountability we have as creators on YouTube, is if we have subscribers and they're watching our videos. But if I start to get really sloppy with my work, I mean, I'm not perfect, right? I don't produce perfect videos. I try my best. Okay, that's all I can promise, is I always try my best in the time that I allow myself. I'm not going to spend weeks on a video, but like these but anyway, my point is that there's no accountability. You're right, for the most part, because once they've attained or built their base of followers and subscribers, and not just subscribers, but people who watch them, right? They're not subscribed, because there's a lot of people, half the people watch my channel are not subscribed. half R, which is a really good rate, you know. Usually it's like much smaller percentage of subscribers watch versus unsubscribed. You know, once they've built up that following, they have a responsibility, in my opinion, to do their due diligence and do their best and not get sloppy and not use any kind of not be derogatory to any system, uh, because it's every system is really good. I've always said that every camera system now is in their own way is very good. And you know, I'll never forget, and as a lot of us, you know, the famous video from Tony, at least in our world, was Micro Four Thirds is dead, right? The infamous video is what I should say. And that was just sloppy work, in my opinion. He didn't really use the kind of metrics that I would use to determine if a system is dead or not. And based on his metrics, every camera system is dead right now. You know, if you use the metrics that he talked about, which was mainly about sales, right? Sales figures going down and cost of equipment. Because he was like, yeah, they need, you know, there's going to be full frame cameras for $1,000 or less, you know, that's the only way they're going to survive. And I'm like, yeah, there's one here and there, but, you know, you've seen what the price of these freaking cameras coming out are costing, you know. Oh my God, it's insane. So it's just insane to get the kind of competency. And I could argue that no camera is as competent as this OM1. You know, I can make that argument, be very one-sided, but I can make the argument that this camera, this OM1, is the most competent, capable camera on the market versus cameras costing thousands more, right? And that's what they're doing for full frame cameras. They're making a case for those cameras, and it's very one-sided. They're not looking at everything there is about photography. And photography is about choice. You choose a system based on your needs and requirements. And you cannot just say, I can't, you know, like I'll never forget, he said something like, I can't recommend this, not the OM1, but it was another Olympus camera. It was probably the EM1X. But he was saying something, I can't recommend this camera when for the same price or less, you can get like this Sony with this lens for wildlife photography. Don't buy the M1X and the 300 f4 Pro because for less money, you'll get a better camera for that. And you know, I get it. He's trying to give his honest opinion about how you should spend your money. It's a very one-sided argument, right? It's not looking at all of the variables and making a large purchase decision like you would when you're buying. I mean, this was a huge purchase for me. In addition to the 300 f4, I mean, that was like almost $6,000 altogether, right? That's half what I made this year, or more than half. I don't think I've even made $6,000 this year in my photo stuff. I totally agree. I wish there was some way that they could be accountable for what they're doing, but we just have to leave it to karma, you know. Long as they're like I said, long as the reviewer, and this is why I don't give Casey a hard time, you know, because I can be super critical of any review I see online from my perspective and what I know about Olympus cameras, but when it comes to like somebody like Casey, I think his heart is in the right place. You know, he's not trying to deceive you or give you bad information. He's just getting a little bit sloppy. But he's not a hardcore camera reviewer, right? He is an entertainment channel. So you got to cut him slack on that, and you have to cut him some slack in the sense that I think his heart and soul is in the right place. He's trying to do reviews and show you what he's found. And we can, of course, point out all the flaws for those of us that know better when he's doing different kinds of reviews. But for the most part, I don't care that he's he's having these issues. Beyond the fact that he does have a pretty good following that take him too seriously. And that's my only concern is when they do these kinds of things, the damage is done. Like someone was saying earlier, I think Randy or Marco, the damage is done a lot of times when you got these channels that have huge followings and they're doing sloppy work. even if it's even if their intent is good, right? The path to good intentions or something, whatever that phrase is, uh yeah, the damage is done. And then channels that cannot be sloppy, like Fro and Tony, they take a little bit of artistic license with their content, right? They're entertaining. But there are much bigger consequences when they say something versus when I say something, for example. And then you take people like Gerald Undone and Gordon Lang. They will never get sloppy in their work, and everything they do, they're very specific and very methodical about their testing and review. And of course, they can't cover everything in every scenario, but they do an amazing job if you really are into the technical details. And Gerald's more technical and has that experience, and Gordon is been in the business forever, so you can take what they say much more seriously, and they have the subscriber base to back them up as well, right? So and then Matthew Gasquet, he does amazing testing, especially for the autofocus systems in our cameras, and he has a great videos on it. These guys are at the top of the field when it comes to when I'm looking for opinions about something and they do a review on it. I definitely watch Gordon Lang, Gerald Undone. Uh, he rarely does stuff I need to look at though. But these are the two, Matthew Gasquet, right? These guys, 100%. I take what they say very seriously. When I'm watching Camera Conspiracies, I'm watching for entertainment to get a good laugh, and also just to see what problems they're running into. Because if somebody like Casey's running into a problem, it's probably a problem that a lot of you are running into. And I look at it as an opportunity for me to make a video to say, okay, if you're having this issue, this is how you get around it, or this is how you correct it, or these are the settings you need to use so that this doesn't happen, right? So I watch the other channels that you cannot take seriously for reviews to see what problems they're having. So that gives me an opportunity to come in and say, okay, if you're doing this kind of photography, you need to make sure you have this setting in the camera set to this, and then you'll get these you know what I'm saying, right? But the problem is, like a lot of you are saying, particularly Marco, that um, people are taking Casey's channel too seriously, and that's a mistake. I wish he would say that more often. And you think it's implied because when you watch the channel, it's fun to watch and entertaining, and he does interesting things. But then you I don't know. In early on, he has mentioned in videos that he's an entertainment channel and don't believe anything he says. And he's constantly making mistakes, right? In his videos, like, don't quote me on that. Don't quote me on that. But you know what I mean? But I get it. I know Casey. I have a certain expectation. I don't know him personally, but I know his channel, and I think I have a good feeling of where his heart is. Rick says, drive-by reviewers. I love that. Often they're like a used car salesman with an ear to the ground so that what they say to please the online community. Pure populism without skill or knowledge. Yeah. Gigasoap says that XH2S and that 700 megabits with the XF23 1.4R original is enticing me every day. Yeah, that's a pretty high bit rate. I mean, the megabits really do add to the image quality in general, but not in terms of color or dynamic range. But the sharpness and the pixelation or lack thereof with higher megabits like that, and you probably know this, so I'm just saying this for the benefit of people who may not know. But my understanding of it, don't quote me on this. Don't quote me on this. But my understanding of the megabits, right? Like our Olympus cameras do 200 megabits, and it depends on the resolution and other things. But 700 megabits versus 200 megabits, if you start recording a statue side by side, you're not going to see any difference in the image quality, right? It's when things start to move a little bit, and everything in this earth moves, right? The earth itself is moving, everything moves. It's when things start to move, is when you see the difference. So if I'm waving my hand like this at 200 megabits, you might see some pixelation in my hand, right? Versus 700 megabits, you could not freeze, but there won't be this pixelation because it's capturing more data. If all the other specs are the same, it's a more compressed data set. And the way compression works is when my hand's moving from point A to point B, right? Let's say I'm moving from point A to point B for 1 second. So that would be 24 frames of my hand moving. Well, the way compression works is it tries to fill in the gaps, right? Or anticipate where my hand is going to go. It'll take like 4 pixels, compress them down to 1 pixel, then it decompresses them back to 4 pixels. But when it decompresses the pixels back out to 4 pixels, now you have 4 pixels the same color. And in video compression, it's trying to anticipate one frame to the next frame to the next frame. So there's a lot less data in 200 megabits, just to make it simple, right? And that's why low megapixel or low bit rate videos have that blockiness look to it, because it doesn't have the data from point A to point B. So that's why you see this block instead of seeing a finger, you see a block in compressed data. I don't know why I'm going into this, because it's not my area of expertise, but like I said, I have a basic understanding of just about everything. I'm just not an expert at anything. Oh, wow. Meadowlark. Yeah, I missed the photo walk yesterday with the photo club. I thought it was today. So I didn't, they met at 5:30 in the morning to catch the sunrise. And I thought it was today, not Saturday. So I missed it. And by the time, I realized that it was Saturday, because David texted me. He's like, "Rob, are you coming or not?" And I'm like, "For what?" And then I look and I'm like, "Oh crap, that's today." So I'm sorry, David. So by the time I got to notice, it was really kind of too late for me to haul ass out there and join everybody. Oh, hey Adam. Yeah, no problem. I know that Adam really enjoys the live streams, and I appreciate that. Yeah, I like this setting. I haven't heard this before. But it's been said many times, right? Do it for you and do it for the client, not other photographers, and take the money. There's a lot of chefs I know that don't have professional degrees, but their restaurants are better than any certified chef's restaurant. Certification just shows that you know the basics. Yeah. I mean, you have a core competency level, or you've shown a core competency level, but it doesn't mean that you're good at it. It just certifications have a certain core competency. And John says, I have the 12 to 40 Pro, 14 to 42 Easy, the 75 to 300, the 14 f2.5. That's a Panasonic, I believe. The 17 to 20, the 25, the 45, and the 75. Which one should I take on a month-long trip with my family with some other good stuff with the EM5 Mark III? I mean, I would take them all, but I need a little more context. How many do you want to take? So let's narrow it down. Mandatory 12 to 40 Pro, mandatory. You got to take that lens on a trip. And then I would follow that with a prime. So if I was going to take one lens, 12 to 40 Pro. If I'm going to take two lenses, I would say the 17 prime. Well, no, let's say the 20 prime. 17 or 20, either one. The 20 is kind of a nice middle ground, right? So I'll say 20. So 12 to 40 Pro, 20 millimeter prime. Then the third lens would be the 75 to 300. So that would be the order I would go. Because 75 to 300 is really a birds and wildlife stuff. And your family's not going to want to go out with you on a bird and wildlife photography because that takes hours, right? But if you have your 12 to 40 and you're 17, you can go everywhere with your family because you're just taking shots here, there, that, the other thing. Using a 75 to 300 is usually much more specific and intentional. But I would take that as my third lens. So those would be my three. And then I'd probably go 45 and 75. So the 75 would be the very last thing I take. Because that's very, very specific lens also. It's a short tele, right? But it's not long enough to really do wildlife, and it's not wide enough to do anything else. It's very specific. It's really good for sports action indoors. The 75 prime, or low light photography, sports action photography. It's really good because you got just enough focal length to capture a person from head to toe. but it's bright enough at f1.8 that you can use it in low light. So I hope that makes sense. 12 to 40 Pro, 12 to 40 Pro, then a 17 or 20. Let's say 20. Depends which 20 millimeter it is, though. If it's the Pro 20 millimeter f1.4 Pro, definitely. If it's not the Pro, if it's that little pancake thing from Panasonic, I would take the 17 from Olympus. So 12 to 40 Pro, 17 Olympus, then 75 to 300 as just that. If there's some opportunity that you need a super telephoto, you'll have that lens. And then I would go 25, 45, 75, whatever from there. And Chuck says, been a while since I managed to catch a live version from Hey, Chuck, well, good to have you here. Always happy to see everyone. Oh, a stabilized on the air. Wow, that's cool. Yeah, the only stabilized lens I have, like I was saying, is the 300 f4. I'm going to have to play with that just for fun one day. And you want to get a D5. So that's the DSLR, right? The D5. Because their mirrorless are called Z, right? So the D5 would have been their flagship mirror DSLR. So it's the full frame version of the D500. And it's still expensive, yeah. That, and I'm not supposed to buy any more stuff. Who's stopping you? I think the D500 is still a better camera than the D5 for the kind of pictures I've seen you take with it, which is like you're using mostly your telephoto lenses. The D500 is a better choice. And I think any gains the D5 might give you in image quality are going to be marginal because you're always in bright light desert. And depth of field is not an issue at all for the photography I've seen you do. So you don't need any more depth of field that I can think of. And I don't know that the capabilities of the D5 are that much better than a D500. So I think you just got a bad case of gas. No offense. I'm guilty of it myself. Yeah, I assume we're talking about Casey here. Kenny Ortez, I watched a video of his this morning, actually. I think it was him. And it was about using flash to make flash look like natural light. And I take a little issue with that video, Manny. I'm sorry. But I think the video, if it was him, I can't remember exactly who it was. But the idea was, how do you make your flash look more natural? And well, basically, he was using natural light because he had the studio and these big, these big windows with natural light coming in, and then all he did was pop a flash at relatively low power, so that all of the ambient light stayed in the image. And I guess that was his point, was don't crush the ambient light down to make it look like a flash shot. Just leave the ambient light in the shot by using a slower shutter speed and or lower flash power. I guess for people that don't know how to use flash, that might be an eye opener, right? So maybe I'm being a little harsh, but I watched it. I'm like, you want to make your flashes look more like natural light? The answer is use more natural light. And I'm like, well, that's like 5 minutes of my day that I can't get back. You know what I mean? Uh, but like I said, that's what I do for a living professionally, is blend natural light and flash together. And so I'm always watching videos that might help me do that better. I'm always, learning is endless, right? In photography. Uh, Even though I have a pretty high skill set with flash and ambient light, I'm always looking. Maybe there's something I didn't think of or something clever. But that was a little bit too much for me. If you want your flash to look more natural, use more natural light. Oh my goodness, Robin is here. How you doing, Robin? Always good to see you. Robin Wong is here. I'm going to assume everybody knows Robin Wong, but he has a YouTube channel. Definitely check him out. Somehow, even before you come on, your name always comes up. I talked about all of you guys this morning briefly, in that, were it not for us, OM Systems would be dead now. For like people like us, right? You, Peter, Jimmy, Emily, Maddie. Now we have the Micro Four Thirds guy, and there's a bunch of other Micro Four Thirds channels out there that are relatively small. But Emily Talpin now, and lots of us right out there. Or not for us. I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe I am overstating the influence that we have on the camera industry or on OM systems in general. Could be. Uh, did Robin? Oh, I did not. I did not address it. But okay, so what I was going to say was, I don't know exactly what you mean by it's crashing. If it was crashing before the firmware update, I haven't had any issues since then. And I've taken tens of thousands of images. I haven't had it crash on me once since the firmware update. Before that, I had it crash on me 3 or 4 times, but that's infinitesimal compared to the probably 100,000 images I took on that camera. With Pro Capture and all that, you can get up to 100,000 shots on a camera. It's all silent shutter, but you can get up there pretty quickly. So that's all I was really going to say, is that after the firmware update, I've not had it crash on me once. So that said, I haven't shot with it as much as I did when I first got the camera. So time will tell. That's all I can say. But I haven't heard of people having crash issues other than today. Basil, start over. You want me to really start over? Okay, well, hey everyone, welcome to my Sunday live stream. Thanks for being here today. We're going to talk about photography. And oh, wait a minute. You can hit the rewind button. There's a little slider there. Then you can start from the beginning. Just hang in here for the end here, and then watch it later. But in the old days, I bet people would have to. Anyway, I was watching all these videos on the 70s and 80s yesterday. I got very nostalgic yesterday. I haven't tried this yet. I haven't tried this. I haven't done it yet. I've been working on my other videos. I need to crank out one or two other ones, but I'll try and go out this week and do that. That would be fun. You don't have a 300 f4 Pro, Robin? You could do that video. One way to create natural flash is to put multiple flashes units outside the window and fire them in as if they're lights. Yeah. Because you put them outside, they're going to be going through curtains, so they're even more diffused. And if you want to get that 1940s type Hollywood look, you use blinds, so you get the shadows of the blinds coming in. I mean, there's so many things, but I just wasted 5 minutes watching this video. But that goes with the territory. When you're trying to learn things, when you get to a certain level, everything you start seeing the same things over and over again, right? That's a video I need to make. Oh, Scott Kelby and Joe McNally have books on Flash. Okay. I'm not much of a book guy, though. I don't read books. Everything I learned about photography, I learned on YouTube and going out and practicing. And I would say it's a good, in terms of skill set, it's about 20% what you learn and 80% practicing and getting good at it. Right? I mean, the old 80-20 rule. I mean, I learned a lot of things on YouTube. Everything I know about photography, I learned on YouTube. But to get any good at it to where I could actually get paid for my photography, that was a lot of practice. I practiced a lot because I knew academically how to do the different things I needed to do, but I wasn't any good at it. I'll give you an example. I had to shoot a property that I shot like 4 years ago. It was a rental property. And so I took a picture of it when they put it up for rent the first time. Now it's 4 or 5 years later. It was in 2017. So yeah, it's 5 years. 5 years passed, and now the people that lived in there moved out, and they're renting it again. So I had to take pictures of the same property. And I compared the images from 5 years ago to what I can do now. It's like a huge difference in the photography. You just would not believe the difference. And it's not so much with the sharpness and the points of view, because getting a sharp image, composing the image, getting the exposure right, these kind of things, you can get pretty competent very quickly, right? For architectural real estate photography, right? Because it's just, you go to this corner, you go to that corner, you get a wide shot, then you crop in, then you pick a focus point, use f5.6 on a micro four thirds, and everything's sharp and so. But where I improved a lot was in the flash photography. The flash and white balancing and blending and all of that stuff, the skill set required in post-processing is where, in both the use of flash and post-processing, there was a huge difference. And what's funny is the client didn't really notice. They thought the images from 5 years ago were good and just wanted to reuse those. But because they had remodeled some things, I had to go in and take pictures. So you do the whole, I'm not going to go out there and take a picture of the kitchen, but they remodeled the kitchen and the bat anyway. So, so when I delivered the new pictures, they're like, "Oh, that looks fine. Go ahead and publish those." And I'm like, my God, do you see the difference between 5 years ago and today? I mean, maybe I don't want to poke the bear and say, you wasted your money 5 years ago by using me. But if I delivered an images today like I delivered 5 years ago, I would be very embarrassed. But that's because I've been doing it, for the last 5 years. I forget when I actually started shooting professionally, but it wasn't much longer. I think it was 2015 or 14, somewhere around that time. I started getting paid, right? And it was, I practiced a lot and I got pretty good. But when I compare what I can do today to what I can do then, and it's got nothing to do with the gear. I could take my EM10 Mark II that I was using, 5, 6 years ago and get the same image quality and deliver the same quality to my client today with that EM10 Mark II as I do. I'm now using the OM1. So it's got nothing to do with the gear. It's all about your skill set and using the equipment and the flash and understanding lighting and white balance and perspective, right? There's a lot of things that go into what I do. And I learned it all on YouTube, but that's like 20% of what happens when I go out in the field. It's 80% because I've been practicing and doing this for a long time. So when I go to a site, I can finish a property usually between an hour and a half, regardless of the size. It could be 1,200 square foot property versus, I'm going to go do a 3,200 square foot. So, more than double the size this week. And it would take me about the same amount of time to do either one because it's like I'm quick now. My workflow is there. They want me to do video too. So I'll try and, next week, either Thursday. I probably won't have it done Thursday, but probably Sunday. If I do a stream Sunday, I'll show you the video that I made for that property. Or maybe it'd have to be the following Thursday, but I'll show you the video and pictures I took for that property. I don't know if you want to see it. If you don't want to see it, just let me know. If you want to see it, I can show it. It doesn't matter. But okay. Unfortunately, the property is, I'm going to be meeting the clients on the property. And so I won't be able to do a vlog because you guys know I vlog sometimes when I go to the properties and you can see me walking around. But all the client's going to be there. The owner of the property is going to be there. And, so I'm not going to be able to do a vlog. I like to vlog when I can, when I go on a real job, because just to show you, I actually do use the gear and and everything professionally, right? I'm not just a drive-by reviewer or YouTuber. I actually use this stuff for real. It says here, Robin says, I practice my flash techniques on much smaller scale, insect macro. I use flash for my wedding and portrait shoots, though only for 10 to 15% of the shots. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, in Malaysia, the weather's nice all the time. Well, not nice, but it can be hot. But you do a lot of things outdoors in Malaysia because it's warmer. My God, around here, I mean, most of the weddings are indoors because it's so freaking cold, even in the springtime. They do the wedding outside, so you get a few shots there, but then they all come back inside to get warm. But yeah, so here it depends on where you are in the US, but generally the weddings are all indoors, so you have to use flash almost all the time. And Basil said, I'd love to see them. Okay. I'll show them. I'll show them next time I do a stream. Just remind me. If I forget, just remind me. Because they'll be on my computer. I have a folder for all my files, right? Just remind me. Like, I can show you one right now. Let me see. Kikoscope says, is the OM5 the success? I don't know. We'll see when it comes out. It won't be long, right? Next month they're supposed to let us know. I haven't read any rumors about it. And then I'm sorry, I'm going backwards on the chat here because it scrolls up and down, so I have to go the opposite direction to catch up. Hey Rob, have you noticed that the price of the vintage pen cameras have? Yes, I have noticed. I have noticed. Yeah, you're right. It's like the pen models, because I guess the anticipation is they're not going to make any more pens. Maybe that's why. So now they're a limited breed. That I was looking at the Leica QL and TL. those are the APS-C cameras from Leica. They're not making those anymore. They got discontinued, right? So I was thinking, oh, maybe I can get one cheap right now, just use it, and then at some later point, it probably won't lose any value. I can sell it and get most of my money, if not more, back. That's the plan anyway, right? For something like that, that would be my plan. Because Leica, I'm not buying a Leica just because I want, it's only because I want it, not because I need it for anything, or I just want that Leica experience. The real key to Leica, though, are the lenses. The Panasonic Leica Summilexes, like the 25-1.4 and the 15 millimeter, those are excellent lenses, but they're not hardcore Leicas like their APO Summicrons, right? The $6,000 lenses. Those are the kind of lenses I really want to try from Leica. I know I can rent them, but man, I'd rather put heating oil in my tank for the winter than rent a lens. That's, man, now I understand when people say you got to choose between, when things are so expensive, you got to choose between food on the table or your medicine. In my case, I got to choose between buying a lens or putting fuel oil in my tank. Because I have to have fuel oil to take showers and things, right? Because the hot water in my house is fuel oil. Don Gum. Oh, that's interesting. I haven't heard that name. Let's check them out. Oh. And then we'll wrap up here soon. I don't know why my streams are getting so long. I was trying to make them less than an hour or an hour thereabouts, and they're going for 2-3 hours. It's it's always opposite. Don Gum Photography. Take top 5 ways to recharge your creativity. Oh, look at that. He's got a little pen there. That's cool. I have to check him out. I'm going to drag him in here. I'll watch him later. 5 uncommon reasons to use vintage lenses. Okay. Can you see in black and white? Oh, interesting. Not bad, Don. I like these topics that you're picking here. How to get started in pinhole. Hungry for a new lens? How about a short stack? All right. Now this is my guy. If he likes kit lenses, he's okay by me. The Pen EP5, destined to become, yeah, I agree with that. Okay, this is pretty generic topic. Oh, very, very interesting. Interesting channel. Maybe I'll have him come on as a guest. I got to watch some of his videos first, but he would be an interesting guy to have on because I like these topics he's picking. I just like that. That's cool. It's not enough though. He needs more. Maybe we can have him on though. Just remind me. I bookmarked him, but just remind me to reach out to him. Does he have a contact? He has no contact, so I have to leave a comment. I have to leave a comment on one of his videos and let him know to contact me. Heck, he could be watching now, right? Who knows? Okay, let me read this correctly. What do you think about the lens 12 to 40 millimeter f2.8 for using it during events? Is a good choice. P.S. I am not professional and use my camera from time to time. Yeah, it's an excellent choice because it has, I mean, the focal length is perfect because you can go wide and then you can kind of get tighter in if you want to do like chest up type shots of people or 2 or 3 people together, and you can still have a good distance. It's the perfect lens for event photography, and being an f2.8 will give you enough light. Just put the camera in auto ISO and you'll be fine. That is one of the finest lenses Olympus makes, and the range 12 to 40 is excellent. So yeah, and it's very sharp, that lens. So you don't have to worry about anything. Just shoot it wide open at f2.8 for everything, and you'll get great results. And event stuff, you're constantly walking around, so you don't know how far or close you're going to be to different things, right? So that zooming ability, I always recommend zoom lenses for events because you just don't know a lot of times where you're going to be able to stand relative to what you want to take a picture of. So 12 to 40 is perfect for that. So this was back about the D500 and the D5. So you have the 300 f4 for both cameras, the M1X and the D500. Yeah, that D500, man, it's still expensive. It's still $1,000 plus, isn't it, used? I mean, that's an awesome camera. If I didn't have so many freaking cameras now, I would definitely have a D500 on my shelf. And I've seen all of this, I believe. The Great Vanzini is here. How you doing? Zach Arias. Yes, I did watch. If you guys don't know Zach Arias, I watched one of his videos on Flash, and it was not a short video. It was like one of these seminar things that he did, and he did an excellent job. He's a really good presenter. Yeah, the Olympuses allow you to create custom profiles. Particularly the Pen F has a lot of options, more than the Fuji, in my opinion. And the other Olympus cameras do as much as Fuji, if not more, in terms of color profiles and doing customization. Now, the only area that Fuji is a little more interesting, and this is the OM1 has resolved that, but you can tweak the white balance in the Fuji a little bit better than you can in a much easier way than you can on the Olympus. The Olympus will do the same thing, but the menu system in the Fuji is a little better for customizing stuff. But that said, the Olympuses have so many capabilities in customizing, particularly black and white, but they all do sharpness, contrast, gradation, highlights, and shadows. And then if you're doing black and white, you can add color filters, color tints. And then if you have the Pen F or higher model, you can do adjustments to midtones. And then if you go to the Pen F, you can start adding vignetting, and you have more color filters in black and white. And then you have also saturation of colors. You can adjust individual saturation of colors. I think there's one other camera, the ep.7, or I forget which one it is. There's another camera that can do that. All in camera. So you can do it while you're out in the field. I mean, of course, with Olympus Workspace, or I'm sorry, OM Workspace, you can do all of these adjustments in Workspace after the fact to a raw image. But it's more fun in the field, right? Making all these adjustments, seeing what you get, because you're seeing it with your own eyes, and then you're seeing it in the camera in real time, versus you take a picture, then 24 hours later you're trying to edit it, and experiment with all these different settings. It's not as fluid as doing it in the field, or as much fun. I'm with you on this, but still, 100%. But definitely Olympus gives you a lot of options for customizing, more so than Fuji, I think. Just slightly more, or they're at least equal. Panasonic is pretty much there too, but you have to dig a little bit more. But Olympus is better. The Pen F is the best, though. The Pen F and that other camera that came out, they don't sell it. Maybe it's the EPL8. I don't know. Anyway, there's another Olympic camera that they don't sell here in the US that has the same capabilities of the Pen F, but just without the EVF. It's just an LCD only. And this is a good question. What kind of event? Because I was giving an answer about the 12 to 40 Pro. It's the 12 to 40 Pro is so versatile. I would say almost any event, but this question might make a difference in my opinion of the 12 to 40 Pro if the event is something else. Like if it's like an air show, no, this is not going to cut it. You need a telephoto just to go kind of extreme. If you're going to an air show event, yeah, the 12 to 40 is not going to cut it. Um, Favorite online data storage. I don't use any online data storage. I use a little bit with Google Drive. I pay for 100 megabits or whatever it is, 100 gig. I don't need much space online. I don't use it. It's just too expensive. I'm already paying for $10 a month for Adobe and 25 or $30 a month for my PPA, and then that crap adds up, man. Next thing you know, you're out a couple $100 a month for stuff that you don't really I don't know. So data online storage, the problem is I can't get enough of it to make it worthwhile. Like if I can buy 1 terabyte for about $100 a year, right? That's reasonable. But what does 1 terabyte do for me? Not much, I mean, three video jobs is like a terabyte. Just 3 video jobs. I can have 3 video jobs in one day. And backing up a terabyte, if I'm thinking about it in terms of backup, it makes no sense. I'd have to wait days for it to upload terabyte of data. And by then the job is done. The client wants his or hers video, and they want their deliverables within 24 hours. And after I deliver the product, the deliverables, right, I really don't have a need to keep it. I could delete it. The hard drive could crash. It doesn't matter. I don't really need it anymore after I've been paid for it. I can only think of one time that somebody asked me in the last 5 or 6 years, somebody asked me, do I have the photos for that property from 5 years ago or whatever? You know what I mean? It's very rare. And if I said no, it wouldn't have been a big deal, right? So I don't have a need for online storage in the sense of because of the video side and the kind of work I do. Now, if I wanted to back up everything all the time, and I don't care how long it takes, it could take months, right? But I have like 6 terabytes. Well, hold on, let me count it. This is 5, 10, 14, 16. I have 18 terabytes of crap on my desk. Never mind at least another 10 terabytes in this drawer that I can attach anytime. So you can see it's prohibitively expensive for me to use online storage, even as a working. And so if I'm not going to use online storage for backup because of the cost, and it doesn't work for me as a working drive, right? Because I could fill a terabyte drive after a few photo jobs. If it doesn't work for me that way either, for short-term stuff, where does online storage work in or fit for me? It doesn't really. It doesn't fit in my workflow at all or the kind of work that I do. So anyway, I don't have a favorite online storage. I just use 100 megabytes or whatever. I think it's 100 gigabytes for like, I think I pay $20 a year. I mean, it's so minuscule. I do need at least 100 gigabytes because of my when I teach stuff, I need to be able to access it no matter where I go. And I got 3 lenses coming today. The 15 lens cap, yeah, it's a 15, and a 12-year-old 50 and another 12 to 42. Wow. I'm not familiar. The 50 is probably what? The OM 51.8? That's a great lens. I mean, when I say great, optically it's not perfect. You can certainly get the Panasonic 20 or whatever. There's better lenses out there. But for 30 or 40 bucks, you're getting a lens that's so well made and just beautiful. right? And feels good. The focus, I mean, it's such a good lens in every way. Um, for the money. I'm not familiar with the 12 to 42. The 15 body cap, that's a piece of crap. I mean, I think I have a vlog or video on my channel where I used it, and the results are okay, but it's definitely, it's like shooting through Coke bottles. It's pretty rough. I was looking at this lens this morning. I think it's probably, yeah, it's probably a really good kit lens. I would agree with you there. I've heard good things about it. Oh, the 12 to 50. Okay. Yeah, that's a good lens. Subscription creep. Okay. Unlimited photo storage. Yeah. I couldn't do it. Um I almost canceled my Prime, so that's the problem. But then I was able to get a good deal on it. I really can't talk about it, but I got it for about half price, so then I kept it. But that's kind of a it's kind of a personal thing. I don't want to talk about why that is, um but yeah, my Prime was due to expire this month and I wasn't going to renew it, but I was able to get a deal. Yeah, I remember you said that they were repurposing unused oversupply of smartphone camera lenses from older days. That's as valid as any other, right? Idea. I mean, nobody sets out to make a body cap lens on purpose, right? It's like we got this stock here. Let's see if we can just slap some, you know, let's 3D print some lenses out with these, 3D print some body caps and throw these lenses in them. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but yeah, they can only fit. Yep. I mean, aperture is a ratio of the focal length versus the opening, right? So the opening is very, very small versus the focal length, hence the f8, right? It's just math. EP7 is very close to getting one, but no viewfinder in Florida is a no-go. Yeah, and it's going to be hard to find the accessories, right? Because there is a EVF attachment on the EP7. But it's probably impossible to find. And if you do find it, it'll probably cost a fortune. It's like I have the microphone adapter for my EPL8. I love my EPL8. I just had it out the other day. I didn't take any pictures with it because it didn't do what I wanted it to do, so I put it back. I forget what it was I was trying to do with it. Somebody had asked me a question on YouTube, and I was like, "Oh, okay, let me check," and then I put it away. Uh, but I have the micro 3.5 millimeter mic adapter for it. Fits in the hot shoe just like the EVF would. But nobody can find that 3.5 millimeter jack anymore for that camera, and I'm sure the EVF would be the same. And Finder only works with the EP5. The EP7 eliminated the opportunity to put aftermarket. Maybe it's the EPL8, EPL7, not the EP7. There's a difference, right? EP7, EPL7. I believe. Let me see. EPL7. They don't show the back of the camera, but right there would be where it would go. I'm sure the EPL7 has the port for the attachment. Easy image sharing, Wi-Fi, whatever. They don't say. Exposure and flash. there would be a well, anyhow, I'm sure the EPL7 has it because my EPL8 has it. But then after the EPL8, they got rid of it. And then there's the Olympus EP7, which is a different camera, right? Yeah. This is the one that I was saying has the Pen F type stuff because it has a little dial. Yeah, the EP7 does not have um, the hot shoe. Normally it would be right here. So the PL series up to the PL8, I think you could put that little viewfinder and mic adapter. Yeah, you sold it for 100. Wow, that's cheap. That's cheap for such a great camera. That camera is good as really even, I mean, for just stills, taking single shots, it would rival the OM1 in my opinion. And would be glad. Okay, I'll show you one today that I did my last one. But after I finish my job this week, assuming everything goes well. Yeah, Ulf is clarifying. EP series have two dials. They don't have the thing. Yeah, EPL8 and VF4 go together, but that VF4 is going to be hard to find, right? Yeah, no, the EP7 is different. Yep, I'm sorry. I'm just reading through the text. Oh, you were thinking about importing one? Sorry, that's Randy's comment. Adam says he was thinking about importing an EP7. I don't know. I think for a few bucks, I'd rather just buy a used Pen F. And the EPL9 is a good deal in the UK. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's any advantage to buying an EPL9 over an EPL7. I can't think of any. So if you could have bought, who is it, the Great Vanzini's EPL7 or whoever it was had an EPL7 for 150 bucks, that would be just as good as an EPL9 in my opinion. Unless you want to buy brand new, then an EPL9 is fine. Okay, let me show you a quick video and then I'll cut it off here. Let me see if I can find how I closed it. Now the drives you should see this stack of drives I have on my desk. But I do have my working drive. It has to spin up again. Sort by date. Let's see. So this is the job I did where I told you that I took pictures 5 years ago and then took them again now. This is so much better than what I did 5 years ago. It's hard to show you because I can't find the images from 5 years ago too quickly because they're archived off onto another drive. But what's funny is like here's the front of the property, right? 5 years ago, these trees and bushes, there was nothing. It was like nothing was grown. They had a tiny, I can't remember. There's like grass here, I think, before. Now they got this mulch and they got these bushes and trees covering the whole front of the property. But 5 years ago, I was able to get a nice clean shot of the front of the whole front of the townhouse without all these trees and crap all over it. So that was kind of interesting to see the difference from 5 years ago to now. The front of the property looks very different than it did 5 years ago. Let's see. Did I do Maple? I don't think I did any video there. I did a vlog. Washington Street, Alexandria. Oh, I did do a video for this. All right, so I can show you this one. Oh, that's not the whole thing. Hold on. Let me figure this out. Give me a second. Video. What is this? All right, here we go. Yeah, I don't know why. It's just, you know, the color modes and things on the Pen F are kind of a consumer thing. No professional would ever use them. So that's why I think they left it off. Okay, so here's the information overlays. Here's the property. This is a gimbal work. I just walked in, right? And then, yeah, I think it was like 2.4 million or something for this place. It's crazy. This other place I'm going to this week is like $1.4 million property. I wouldn't want to live there. It's so small. It's crazy. And I used the, this was actually, I was using the EM1 Mark III on this particular one. So the highlights and shadows aren't quite as good as I can do with the OM1 now. But I did this one with the EM1 Mark III. This was a little sloppy gimbal work. I wasn't too happy with that shot, but I needed it, so I put it in. Simple panning shot. Anyhow, oh, it's almost over anyway. I'll let it finish. So clearly this was a hair salon, and there's some demographics of like not where I live, but where this property is. There's a simple external shot, internal. So that's what I do for videos, stuff like that, right? Property videos, commercial. And now I'm using the OM1. I used it a couple of times. I meant to show you that video today, but this one just happened to come up for some reason. Because I don't think you guys have seen that one before. And when I can, I try to vlog when I do the jobs. But like I said, the clients are going to be there, so I can't really vlog while they're just standing around unless I include them in the video. Oh, the gimbal I have a really old one, but I have the very first Zion Crane gimbal that came out. So this thing is like 5 years old. Back when they put them in nice cases, because I bought another gimbal, a Manfrotto, that came in like this case made out of foam. It's so ridiculous. But this one, yeah, Zion Crane. It is ancient, but it still works. This is the original Zion Crane, the very first one. It's really a nice set, I think. Got some extra batteries. And back then they didn't have apps, right? So they gave you a little remote for it. I never used this, but yeah, apps were not a thing back when I bought this. And so they provided a remote so that you can control it remotely. But I bought this Manfrotto one. I'll show you this one. I might have to get another one. I'm saving up for it. But this Manfrotto one has a handle that I like. So this lets me get lower. I don't need to use this very often. In fact, I don't think I've used this for any paid jobs yet, but it's so much easier to hold the gimbal like this than like this. You know what I mean? And most of the time I have the gimbal on a dolly, so it doesn't matter. I almost don't even need a gimbal now that I got a dolly for a lot of the video. I lost my mouse. Have I ever tried? No. I cannot get away handheld. That is just not possible. If I was in one room and panning and things, maybe. Uh, but yeah, there's no way I could get away handheld. Uh, it's impossible because gimbals give you that perspective that you can't do handheld really. In a very smooth way, being able to kind of keep the camera level as you're panning up, down, left. It's doing handheld. Doing that handheld would be virtually impossible, the way a gimbal works. Yeah, so Randy will tell you, handheld, it's tough. I mean, if you're going for sort of an action shot, there's a place for busy uh, handheld type videos. Certainly, there's a place. A lot of like fight scenes. You never see a fight scene on a gimbal. Well, maybe in the Chinese ones when they're on wires and everything, right? But if you take your typical fight scene, what's his name? There's a couple of movies I'm thinking of. I can't think of the names of, but those fight scenes are very busy, and those are like they have this handheld camera kind of look to kind of create that sort of real time look to it. But like you're watching it live, and the action is crazy. But then, anyhow, Jose is here. Hello, Jose. It's been a while. I'm about to head out because I'm hungry. It's 12:30. Okay, I think I'll wrap it up here. So, you guys have a great weekend. What's today? Sunday. So whatever's left of your weekend, if any, it's probably Monday for Robin already. Thanks for coming in today, Robin. But especially thanks to all of you that join me every week. I really appreciate you taking the time with me and talking about photography. I always have a lot of fun. And if you'd like to buy me a coffee, it helps me out a lot. There's a link down here for that, right? robtrek.com/coffee, whatever. Either way, thanks for being here today. It was a lot of fun. We'll see you guys again, most likely on Thursday.